All right, today we are digging into a single tragic event that happened on a train in Charlotte, North Carolina. But here's where it gets really interesting. This one incident almost instantly split into three completely different stories. It's an incredible case study in how competing realities get built right before our eyes. Okay, let's just jump right in with this really powerful claim that frames the very first narrative. You see, this statement isn't just describing a crime. It's basically saying society itself is collapsing. And that right there sets the stage for a much, much bigger argument. So here is how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at the initial story of the murder. Then, the ideological call to action that grew out of it. After that, we're going to dive into the questions and doubts that led to a totally opposite story, the hoax allegation. And finally, we'll try to figure out what these dueling realities really mean for all of us.
All right, so first up, let's just establish the baseline facts of the event, at least as they were presented by the very first source. This is the foundation, the original story, that everything else is either trying to build on or trying to tear down completely.
According to this first account, the whole tragedy went down in just 4 minutes. Think about that. At 10 p.m., Iryna Zarutska gets on a train. By 10:04, she's been attacked. And while her alleged attacker was caught almost right away, tragically, Iryna didn't survive. It was presented as a swift, brutal, and very public crime. Now, this is where the story really gets its narrative power. The specific identities here are absolutely central. On one side, you have Iryna, a young, promising artist, a refugee who fled a war looking for safety. And on the other, you have a homeless man with a long criminal record and a history of mental illness, who had just been released by a judge. These aren't just details. They're the fuel for the story that's about to be told. Okay, so let's look at how this event was immediately taken and framed as something way bigger than just a murder. The crime itself becomes the evidence, the proof for a huge ideological argument about the entire state of the country. This quote right here, this is the pivot point. The argument being made is that Iryna's death isn't just some random awful thing that happened. No, it's a clarion call. It's a moment meant to wake up a specific group of people to what this source is claiming is a deep societal crisis that's targeting them. So this is where you see the event being interpreted as proof for a worldview that already existed. The argument links this single murder to big issues like unchecked crime, immigration, and something it calls anti-white propaganda. Even the fact that other passengers didn't intervene is used as evidence of cultivated hatred. And the conclusion drawn is that this event demands a racial awakening for sheer survival. And this is framed as something not just political, but biological and even spiritual. But almost as soon as that narrative was out there and taking hold, another group of people started looking really closely at the footage and the story, and they began asking some very sharp questions that challenged the whole thing, and the story really started to fray around the edges. And this was the first major challenge. This was the thread that for a lot of people started to unravel the entire narrative. It came from this one simple but really powerful question. The story said she was fatally stabbed in the neck, so people started asking, where's the blood? And this slide just lays it all out, side by side. The written story claims a fatal stabbing, right? But the counter-narrative points to what you can, or in this case can't, see. They ask, if she was so badly hurt, how did she manage to pull her legs up? If a knife was used, why can't we clearly see it? It's a head-on collision between the story we're being told and what some people claim their own eyes are showing them. So this skepticism, it didn't just stop at asking questions about the details. Oh no, it escalated and fast. It blew up into a second, full-blown narrative that claimed the entire event wasn't just reported wrong, but that it was a complete and total fabrication, a staged hoax. The whole deconstruction process starts by going after the victim's own identity. This counter-narrative says that the photos of Iryna don't add up, pointing to things like her lip size changing between pictures. And they use this as evidence that she wasn't a real person at all, but an AI-generated character created specifically for this story. Next, they go after the attacker's appearance and backstory as more proof that this whole thing was faked. They argue that his long dreadlocks would never be allowed in prison, which totally contradicts the story that he was just released. And, on top of that, wearing a heavy hoodie in the middle of a hot, humid August in Charlotte, they flag that as behavior that just makes zero sense. And then there's everyone else on the train.
The critics point to them as further proof of a hoax. This theory says they react with this weird, unnatural calm, just kind of looking over as if someone dropped their hat, not like they just saw a fatal stabbing. The clear, convenient camera angles are also pointed to as being a little too perfect, almost like a staged production. So you gotta ask, right? If it is a hoax, what's the point? Well, these claims all build up to a pretty wild conclusion, that this wasn't a crime at all, but a calculated intelligence operation. The theory goes that the story was designed to blend propaganda about the war in Ukraine with racial conflict here at home. It flags the attacker's name as suspicious, claims his family tree links to powerful people, and points to federal agencies getting involved in a local murder as proof of a big conspiracy designed to distract and divide all of us.
So, here we are. We are left with two totally different, completely irreconcilable stories that came from one single event. On one hand, a tragic murder that signals the collapse of society. On the other, a deep state hoax designed to manipulate everybody. What does the fact that both of these stories exist tell us about the world we live in?
Well, this case is a textbook example of something called narrative weaponization. Basically, it's when the actual facts of an event, whatever they might be, become way less important than the story you can build around it. The event itself is just raw material, something to be shaped into a weapon for an ongoing ideological battle.
So, what have we really seen here? Well, events aren't just events anymore. They're ammunition. Visuals, like a photo or a video, aren't seen objectively. They're used to confirm what a person already believes. And online, a whole bunch of questions and weird details can be packaged together to feel like a mountain of convincing evidence. The entire goal shifts away from finding out what actually happened and towards just winning the argument.
And that's the question this whole thing leaves us with, isn't it? If one single event can instantly create two parallel universes of belief, where both sides are absolutely convinced they're right and the other side is either lying or totally delusional, what does that mean for our ability to agree on anything at all?